Hi there, and welcome to part 3 of our sentence instancing tutorial series. In the last two editions, we've created a framework for our sentence instancing tool, how to set up the script and layout for a basic UI. In this part, we're covering a couple of different approaches, how you can create, how we would like to call it, animation shapes. Hopefully, this provides you food for creative thought and gives you a broader technical skill set for creating rich kinetic typography. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is where we've left off. I'm going to play the timeline, split my window, and select a panel. You see that it's still working. Speed, color invert. I think I'm going to put a couple of extra parameters in here. To close all the viewports for reducing the chance for getting frame droppings, because the viewport is also eating bandwidth from your CPU. I'm going to put two more extra sliders for controlling the width and the height of the shape. And it also comes in handy for the shapes we're going to create further on. You see this exclamation mark? That means that all these three containers share the same global op shortcut. So we have to change those. Call this one height, and this one width. Also change the text, height, and width. I'm going to leave the range for now for both of them. This UI seems a little bit off. Put it a little bit higher. We're going to control the width and height within the convert job base container. And we're going to do that by stretching the maximum and the minimum values of these true position jobs. So for all three of them, I'm going to input the math. To stretch up the range of the minimum and the maximum value. So first we have to know what these minimum and maximum values actually are. And we'll do that with an analyze job. Put that one in a container first. Analyze. And we're going to pull the data from the null. So select upper level null 2. Channel names, probably only going to need the T values. So TX, TY, TZ. So now the analyze, set this one to minimum, close it, call this one min, copy that one for the maximum, Call that one max. So back a level. So we're going to adjust the range. So the from range will be the values as they are. So up analyze slash min. I believe it was the first one, but to make sure we just call it by name. Okay. Copy that one for the max. And the to range, you see that this is the minus version of this one. So we're going to pick the values from the height slider we've just created in the UI section. And we gave that one a global up shortcut. It's called height. And the null was called out1. Close that one. So up, height, or let's see the tx. Now we need a width. Up, out1, and the first channel. And the positive version is the same one, so we have to multiply this one with -1. So now when we adjust the width, you see that the shape is deforming. But like I mentioned earlier, we have to adjust the TZ in the same way, otherwise it's going to deform in an ellipse kind of circle. So the values of the TZ are probably exactly the same. Not quite exactly, but I think if we're going to copy these values, from range from the analyzer, what was it called? Yeah, minus, of course. Delete this one. TZ. And the max. So now if we're adjusting the width, you see that its ratio stays in shape. So that's for the width, and now the height. It's basically the same. Up, analyze, minus ty. copy that one for the max. And the 2 range, height, up, out, 1, first channel, multiply it by -1. For that one, delete the multiplier. So now see that the height is working as well. So you can squeeze your shape to a circle, stretch it up. These are parameters you're probably going to use a couple of times. So that's it for the extra parameter. And now we're going to build a couple of what I would like to call it animation shapes. Start with a base container. Call this one noise. This noise animation shape works a little bit like this one. So we are going to borrow this section, copy it, paste it. Just create a noise job with 3 channels, T, X, Y, Z. And just like with the last one, we don't want it to be hard-coded in the length. So if we set this one to samples, you see that it has 600 samples right now. And we want it to follow the amount of characters of this sentence. So we're just going to copy this expression, paste it in here. $139. This 138. So set this one to 1. Yeah, now they are matching. And if I'm connecting this one with the null, you see that it's already generating an interesting shape. So if you connect this one here, you see that it's already working. I can adjust the width and the height. You would probably think, why don't you just animate the noise in here? Well, I'll show you why. So I'll just animate this with a simple expression. It's a little bit fast. Multiply by the thing is that this noise now is generating all random values. But the downside of this approach is that all this data is changing from early on in the chain up until here. So this whole section needs to update continuously, and that can cause frame droppings. And there's also something about the animation itself I'm not very fond of. It moves a little bit too staccato for my taste, so we're going to do it a little bit different. So I switch this off. I think I'm going to make this sentence a little bit longer. And for that I often use this blind text generator. So I can just generate random sentences based on the amount of characters. So let's say 400. Copy that one. Paste it. And let's see what happens now. You see a couple of characters jumping around at this spot right here. And that's because of this is not actually a nice looping noise, because this value is somewhere around 0.2 and this one slightly below it. So if we're going to the convert job container, you see that somewhere I have to check where exactly, might be here. Things are just not lining up smoothly. And there's a neat trick for that, to fix that, is by blending the first part of this noise channel and the end part both to the same values. And we'll just choose the value 0, so I'll use a constant for that. Close it up with a null. I think I'm going to collapse this section into a new container. Again a null here, and then out. It's not entirely necessary, but gives a better overview. No one, yeah, okay. So like I said, I would like to blend the beginning of this noise string to 0 and the end as well. So if we cycle it further up in the chain, you'll get a nice closed loop. And we're going to use a blend job for that. Place this one here. Blend. Needs 3 inputs. And the first one is what I like to call a blend shape. It's basically a pattern when it says value 1, you don't blend. And if it says 0, you do blend. I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to use an S-curve to give it a nice ease in and ease out effect. The length, well, let's say 10. So this is the beginning. And this is the ending. Just switch that one. Like that. And in the middle, we'll use a pattern. Constant pattern. And the length of this one is going to be the length of the sentence minus these two. So just use the length of the null up. Null one. Num samples 400, yes, minus S curve 1 num samples multiplied by 2. Okay, so if I'm going to join these together, don't think if, oh yeah, okay, I just only need one, okay. So the blend shape needs to be on top. Like that. And set the blend method to proportional. And as I do that, you see that these values, the beginning and the end, are switching. This is how they were. And with the blend job to proportion, you see that these are lining up. So the beginning and the end is 0. And let's see if it already had an effect. I think so. Yes, this one is hooked up. So if I'm going to skip this part, okay, that's not working. Interesting. Somehow it's still looking at the null here. And I wanted to look at this null. Yeah, now it's looking at this one. Yeah. Let's see if I can adjust this noise. Why did this happen? Numcalls. Oh. Put it in a container, so I have to go up a level. Change the period a little bit. Make it a little bit smoother. Just want to make sure that the effect is noticeable. This is the old one. So especially around this area, you see that it's now going much smoother. Opposite to this one. It's subtle, but with this technique you can get a smooth, closed up loop. So when you're going to extend it in this convert job, things will line up much better. So that's the noise shape. I think I'm going to make some kind of switch in between. So let's make a button, a switch button somewhere. Somewhere around here. Or let's do it on the top, just below the input field. A button. The line order, make it a value higher than 0. Just 0.1. So it's underneath the input field. I think I have to adjust the offset a little bit. Like that. Okay. Switches button type to momentary, because I only have to press it once and it doesn't need to toggle anything, so let's give this button also a global up shortcut. Call this one switch. switch. Let's adjust the size a little bit. Make this 60, 80. Okay. Split my window. Let's have a look at this area right here. I would like to put in a switch in here, so insert switch. Make that one the first one. Now it's not doing anything. I basically want this switch button to toggle between the select inputs. I think I'm going to use a count for that. So insert, count. In this stage we only have 2 inputs, so a 0 and a 1. So this count needs to loop with a maximum of 1. So every time I press this, let's go to the switch. 1, 0, 1, 0. So now I want this value to drive this switch. And I think I'm going to use an job execute with the value change toggle on. Put in a small script. So every time the value change, the input switch is going to change as well. So let's see. If we have a global up shortcut, well, I think I'm going to collapse this one. So we can give it a global up shortcut. You can't give a global up shortcut for shops, only for containers. So I'm going to collapse this one. Let's call this one shape switch. Okay. So then up, shape, switch, up, switch 1, dot bar, and I believe it was input. Yep. Input is, and we use this val function. It corresponds with the val in this out job. So val. And now if I'm going to press this button, you see that we have a switch now. Okay. Close that one. So let's start with a new shape. A new base container. Call this one grid. This one is quite easy. We'll just take a grid. A null. And then out. Can't put it in here because it needs an in. So in here, third one. It's not switching to the grid because we have to adjust the range of the count of our switch. Set this one to 2. It's not doing anything yet. And that's because the grid probably only has one primitive. If you look at the display options, primitive number, you see that it's just 0. And we can fix that by choosing polygon instead of mesh. So now this polygon has 360 primitives with 20 rows and 20 columns. So it misses 40 primitives. And that's because the outer points overlap. Or how am I going to explain this one? These are actually points instead of primitives. So we just have to put an extra one in here. So now you see that it has 400 primitives. The 0 also counts as a 1, so 1 and 399 is 400. But just like with the other shapes, we like to have this not hard-coded. So what I'm probably going to do in this situation, I'm going to calculate the square root of the amount of characters of this sentence. So we can use the same value for the rows and the columns, just for symmetrical sake. So I'm going to use a constant. And this one, just like this one, is going to look at the amount of characters in here, 400. And I'm going to use a math to calculate the square root. Let's see. Here. So that's 20. A null. Put that one in here. That one as well. And to compensate for the outer range, just do +1, +1. So the size of this grid is not hard-coded anymore. If I'm going to change this sentence in an amount of characters that's not very nicely divided with a square root function, something like 345. Just see what happens. You see in this example, it's rounding it upwards. But you can set this one to ceiling just to make sure, so you always have enough characters for your grid animation shape. So if we're going to switch to it, you see that it's already working. Set the rotation to 0. The interesting thing with this is that we're looking at the back of the character. So what we could do is just put a transform in here. But that's probably not going to do anything good. If we transform it 180, you see that it's still mirrored. So we probably have to rotate this instant shape. But we already rotated this one for the sake of our first animation shape. So if you create a different animation shape, you probably have to rotate this one 180 or just leave it at 0. So we need some kind of switch that tells this transform operation that if we have this snake shape rotated 180 degrees with this noise shape as well, but for the grid we want this one to be 0. So what we could do is if we put a table in here, because this switch is corresponding with this button. And if you fill in a table, let's see how many shapes, 3. So 3 rows, give it 2 columns. Call this one snake, noise, grid. And this one needed to be 180. Just leave this one as well, 180, and this one needed to be 0. So let's call this one rotate. So we're going to use this index value of this switch to let the transform operation look at the different rows. I'll just show you in a minute how that's working. Split my window. Transform. So I'm going to put in an expression in here. Let's see, we gave this one a global op shortcut. I believe it was called switch shape. So op switch shape op, and we're going to look at the table rotate, and the line is corresponding with the input value of this switch. So this already might work. Up, switch, shape, up, switch 1, dot bar dot input. Getting quite long. So if you're accessing data inside of a table, you always have to give the first one an integer, and that's going to be the row. And the second one is going to be the column. So the row is corresponding with the input value of the switch. I believe this one might already work. Let's see. The second column, so that's 1. No, we still have an error. Let's see. Global up. Let's see if that one corresponds correctly. Shape switch, shape switch. Oh, switch shape. Shape switch. Shape switch. So, yeah, that's it. So now if we see that this transform rotation value is looking at this table. So the first one, the snake, 180. Second one also, and the grid 0. So now the text is not mirrored anymore. Okay. And now you see why this height and width parameter comes in handy. You can play with the shape of this grid a little bit. You can rotate it. This gives you some kind of Star Wars-ish kind of effect. It's a bit like a typewriter-ish effect. Okay.